Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Tuesday by Andrew Erickson. We are talking buys and sells. This is part one. We're going to be focusing on the running backs in this episode. And then, of course, in part two, as always, we'll be talking about the wide receivers and then a little bit on the quarterbacks and tight ends as well. If I am yawning at all during this episode, it's because I did stay up and watch every inning of the World Series game that went to 18 innings last night. It was an epic, one of the best baseball games, postseason games that I certainly can remember watching in a very long time. Shouts to the Dodgers. I am rooting for them, even though they're the big, bad, scary, machine overspending everybody. As an Orioles fan, I cannot possibly root for the Blue Jays. So all in on the Dodgers. Excited to see them walk that off. Did you watch any of that game, Erickson?
What is baseball? No, I did not watch any of this baseball game that you are talking about. I did see some of the highlights on TV that the Dodgers, there's a walk-off home run, right? Is that how they won?
By Freddie Freeman, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I always like to think myself as a low-key Dodgers fan. I have a bunch of Dodgers hats because I really like the logo. It's a very classic look, just the LA. I think it's a really good look, especially for a baseball hat. I got a couple LA baseball hats, so go Dodgers. Glad they won.
One of the guys on our social team, Tyler, will not be happy to hear that. He lives in Canada. He's a diehard Toronto Blue Jays fan, and I was following him on Twitter last night, just living and dying with every pitch. It's there's nothing like playoff baseball. The lack of a clock just makes it so different from every other sport, and so you get to these World Series games that go on, and are just they're really epic. So that was fun. One game that I'm sure you did watch is Monday Night Football. This one was not a close extra innings affair or anything similar to that. It was a blowout, although it was closer early in the first half before the Chiefs pulled away. In the second half, 28-7 win for Kansas City. Mahomes, he did throw 2 picks technically, but just continues to be awesome in general. Just barely missed 300 yards and 3 touchdowns for the game. Isaiah Pacheco led the team in carries, 12 carries, 58 attempts. That's a 4.8 average. Kareem Hunt had 9 carries, 40 yards, and of course had 2 touchdowns, 1 in the air, 1 on the ground. Travis Kelce was good, 99 yards and a touchdown. Rashee Rice just looks like he's going to be very much worth the 6-week wait for any managers who held on to him. 9 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown. Let's just start on that Chiefs side. This offense is really all systems go right now. The running back room is frustrating for fantasy managers because the guy getting most of the carries and who has started to look better is not the guy getting the goal line work. But besides that, this is a pretty straightforward, fun offense to be a part of.
Yeah, they're one of the most pass-happy offenses in the NFL, so you're getting a ton of volume from across the board. Rashee Rice has stepped in and immediately became the alpha. I'd like to see that poll now where, since you got Rashee Rice back in your lineup, what is your record? I know I'm at least 2-0 since getting him back after struggling for the first 6 weeks of the season without Rashee Rice. So, yeah, he has been an absolute monster. It looks like he could score a touchdown every single week. And he actually had, in this game, he could have scored 3 touchdowns. Right, he gets tackled at the 1 on one of his rushes. He has another red zone attempt that he gets tackled inside the 5-yard line. So, again, it's not usually going to be Kareem Hunt that scores the multiple touchdowns. It's usually going to be one of these pass catchers, probably Rashee Rice. So, I think he's locked and loaded as like a top 5 fantasy wide receiver rest of season. I will say with Kelce, a lot of his yardage came on really 2 big plays. He had 2 plays over 30 yards. I wouldn't necessarily bank on that being super sustainable week after week. We have seen where he's not nearly as involved when Rice is involved. If you look at the splits from the first half to the second half, Kelce was more involved in the first half where Rice was not, and then you saw the opposite in the second half. So I do think there's going to be a little push and pull when it comes to Kelce and Rice. I think Rice is the alpha. I think if he's seeing a lot of targets, it's going to hurt Kelce in the long run. So I think Kelce's kind of like a sell high, but again, it's tight end. So, do with it what you want. If you can't upgrade from Kelce, then, just hold him. He plays with Mahomes, and he can always catch a touchdown like he did this past week. So I would say with the backfield, just keep tabs on Pacheco and his knee. It looked like he took a major hit to his knee, and it looked like, oh my God, this could be a devastating injury for a guy coming off an injury from last year. However, he looked like he was okay on the sideline. We'll see, because sometimes players do this where it doesn't look as bad during the game, and then we get reports later on that it swells up, etc. So that's something to kind of monitor. I know Brashard Smith really regressed in his role. It looked like he was ascending and then his role just tanked. He did fumble in this game, so maybe that was something that kind of dipped in his usage. And Kareem Hunt was obviously healthier than last week. So I would look at those Chiefs' other running backs. If Hunt or Smith is available on waivers, I would be looking to scoop those guys up in case Pacheco does miss some time with a potential knee injury. But that's really it from the Chiefs side.
Yeah, that's a good shout on the Pacheco injury as well. Just quickly on the Chiefs side, we're not going to spend a ton of time on the Commanders because no Jayden Daniels, how much can you really even talk about? But Xavier Worthy, if I took hold away as an option, hold is not on the table. You have to either buy or sell Xavier Worthy right now. Which would you rather be doing?
Probably just buy him because I want Chiefs offense, right? That's kind of the thesis of the play, where I think that he saw 8 targets in this game. He had one of his targets removed because of a penalty. He's a big play specialist. These last 2 games haven't really been in his type of game script. Who are they playing next week? Buffalo Bills, right? So if that game is high scoring 30-30 and the Chiefs are actually pushed in some capacity, well, that's a matchup where Worthy can actually take advantage. I think we brought this up on the ranked show where I compared Xavier Worthy to Jameson Williams, and Fitz kind of pushed back on me, and he was rightfully so to do it because, yes, those guys are kind of profiling as boom or bust, but which one of those teams has a strong run game and which one doesn't, right? I don't think anybody is trying to pretend the Chiefs have this insane running attack. No, they are a pass-first offense. So I think that Worthy, if this is the floor he can offer on a week-to-week basis, and then obviously if he catches a long one for a touchdown, then you're feeling good about it. But Hunt's not going to score 2 touchdowns every single week. Kelsey's not going to rip off the massive plays every single week. So I think just considering his price, where, everyone's really pretty low on Worthy, I think he's a nice access point to getting this Chiefs offense on your roster.
I'm pretty nervous about what the touchdowns are going to look like at the end of the year. It's just really hard to be a successful impact fantasy wide receiver if you are not scoring any touchdowns. He had 9 total last year, 3 of them on the ground. This year he has just 1 total, so he's on pace for 2 on the season. He'll probably finish with more than 2, but the way they're using Rice so much down in that area, obviously the way they use their running backs when they're close to the goal line, it does make me nervous. He needs to break a long one, it feels like, to score, and that's just going to be inconsistent.
No, I agree with you, but if you're making me buy or sell, it's buy Chiefs offense. Get Chiefs on your team.
Anything on the Commanders side, quickly, again, with no Jayden Daniels, it's hard to evaluate the offense too much. Terry McLaurin looked really good on his 3 catches. There was a degree of difficulty on them, but of course he leaves the game with a quad issue, the same quad that he missed several games with already this season. So keep an eye on that. On a short week, definitely a concern. And then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, we've talked about him a lot on the show. I know people are interested in the usage. He obviously, of the running backs in this game, because Mariota had 8 carries, but of the running backs in this game, he had 9 of the 11 carries that a running back had. Deebo Samuel also had 1. There were 12 total carries by non-quarterbacks, but it was 2.8 yards per carry. It was against a good run defense. The Chiefs are a good defense in general. 9 for 25, bad game script, but there's been a lot more duds than there have been breakout games from Bill this season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I kind of was still on Krosky-Merritt as a buy last week. I thought that he was a buy low, and obviously that did not pan out here in this particular matchup, but he's still the starting running back for the Commanders, right? He still played 57% of the snaps. Now, he's not seeing 3-down usage in terms of catching passes. We know that McNichols is kind of in that role, and this was obviously a worst case scenario when it comes to the type of game script that it worked in. It was a tough defense on the road. I think with Krosky-Merritt he's pretty easy to sit, I would say, in terms of if he's on your roster. This was kind of a sit spot for him against the Chiefs. Next week he's playing the Seahawks, right? Sit him. There's no reason you should play Krosky-Merritt. But when you look at the rest of the schedule, and if there's a chance that you do get Jayden Daniels back, well, he plays the Giants and Cowboys in the fantasy playoffs. Those are really 2 great matchups for Krosky-Merritt. And he's probably going to get dropped from a lot of different teams, but he's still the starting running back on an offense that, at least when Daniels is healthy, he can run the ball. So, again, I wasn't right about him as a buy low. We'll see how things shake out in some better matchups right now. You're probably just stuck with him. You just got to keep him on your bench. Even with,
so there are 4 teams on bye in week 9. I feel like even with that, I'm going to not want him inside my, top, 36 running back, against Seattle, and just the way he's that will really make me quite nervous. Although you might be kind of forced to rank him in the mid 30s or higher, just, when you're missing players and injuries and stuff. But Yeah, I would not be trying to start him this week for sure. Let's go to the running backs that we want to be buying right now. Erickson, who do you have to start things off for us?
I'm going to go with Jaylen Warren, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I've liked what I've seen from him the last couple of weeks. He's been around that 65% snap share, where Kenneth Gainwell's kind of been hovering around that 35% snap share. And I think Warren just looked really, really good. Last week, 62 yards on 13 carries. He's been really efficient all year long, top 10 in rushing success rate and in PFF rushing grade this season. And I like the schedule rest of season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got some plus spots in the fantasy playoffs. And Warren, and I'd be interested to see, Worm, if you can pull this up, but his finishes by week are all really, really strong across the board. I don't know if he's had one week where he's just been like a total bust, and it's been in different ways. Sometimes it's because of the receiving he's had, sometimes it's because he scored a touchdown, but he's really offered a pretty high floor every single week, even if he hasn't had this like monster ceiling game. Of course, the one ceiling game for a Steelers running back was Gainwell against the Vikings in Dublin or London, in one of those games where Warren was inactive. So he kind of missed it on the smash spot, but besides that, he's been really consistent. He's RB15 in expected points per game. I think if you ask somebody, hey, Jaylen Warren, top 15 running back rest of season, I think people would be like, that seems kind of aggressive. But what we've seen so far is, yeah, that's kind of where he's been, in that RB15 range. I think maybe that's his cap, but if he runs a little bit hot in some of these plus spots, I think that he's a solid running back to try and target in trades.
So ironically, I didn't need to look it up because Tara and I do a short form video on 5 moves to make every week, and she had Jaylen Warren as a buy on her show as well. So everybody should check that out if they want a little more conversation on Jaylen Warren. And I pointed out that exact same thing on that episode about, if you just look at his game log and his weekly finish, this is in half PPR scoring. It's RB17, RB13, RB20, RB25, RB10, and then this week was RB28. It was a little bit higher, I think, going into last night. But obviously, like, RB28 as the lowest finish on the season just really highlights the floor that you are, and it also kind of highlights the ceiling, right? There hasn't been that big smash, like you kind of mentioned, like that was Kenneth Gainwell. RB10 is the highest finish, and it came in the most enticing matchup he's had so far, which was at Cincinnati in Week 7. But by and large, he's been between RB10 and RB28. I mean, not even just by and large. He has literally been between RB10 and RB28 in every game that he's played this season. He's really interesting on the schedule front, and this is something that I also talked about with Tara, which is the stretch run to get to the fantasy playoffs is amazing. The actual fantasy semifinals and fantasy championship are pretty bad. So the stretch run from week 11 through week 15, so just 5 straight weeks, Cincinnati, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami. Those are really great run defenses to be going. That's an awesome 5-week stretch of opportunity and great matchup for Jaylen Warren. Week 16 and 17 are at Detroit, at Cleveland. That looks a whole lot different. So schedule-wise, it's an interesting one because obviously you won't be able to like sell high on him after that Miami game by the time we get to week 15. But to get you to the playoffs, he's a really intriguing buy.
And I will say, in his defense, he has shown that even in tougher matchups, he's not going to just give you a total 0, right? He faced the Browns earlier this year already, and he was okay, right? Like, it wasn't like
was
a
his
monster
second
game.
worst. It was his second worst game.
But relative to like what your expectations are from him, like you can still be able to start him.
Actually, it was his worst game by score. It was his second worst by positional finish, but it was his worst by fantasy output.
But what was it? What was his finish? Right? Was it RB50? No, I think it was probably like RB30 something. Right?
It was RB25, but he only had 7.3 fantasy points.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, if he gets you to the dance, you should be happy that you went after Jaylen Warren, and then you can figure out week 16 when you get there.
Yeah. And honestly, even week 16, like against Detroit, like I could see him catching some passes in that game, right? It's that week 17 at Cleveland that's the one that like looks really tough.
Also, though, Cleveland has a lot of injuries on defense right now, so things can change.
3-13 going into that game, defense is about effort. Does that defense look as strong as it did early in the year? I think is a fair point too.
And if the Steelers are chasing that 9-8 record, they're going to be going all out.
Chasing that sweet 4 seed in the AFC. He's RB16 rest of the season in the consensus rankings. That too high, too low, or just right?
No, I think that's That's exactly spot on. Again, I don't know who the exact 15 running backs are ahead of him. I know he's 15 in expected points per game, so I think that 16 is a appropriate value for Jaylen Warren rest of season.
Some of the guys behind him in the rankings: Chase Brown, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Rico Dowdle. You wouldn't make cases for them ahead of him, any of them?
Probably not, no. I think that Warren is probably the guy among that group.
Okay. We usually look kind of in that teens and 20s range. That's usually kind of the sweet spot for players to trade really in either direction, buying or selling. But your other name here is somebody who's ranked a lot higher. So you're kind of aiming for a bigger fish with your second running back to buy.
Yeah, this guy, Josh Jacobs for the Green Bay Packers. I think that maybe we have a potential buying window after the last 2 weeks with Jacobs where it's not the production that's been lackluster. I think that his usage has kind of been interesting over the last couple of weeks. He's been dealing with this calf injury that I think has limited his total volume, and it's gotten Emmanuel Wilson more involved. And I think it's just smart to take advantage of when the secondary running back comes in, is looking better, more explosive, getting more yards. I think that gives you an opportunity for maybe you have a manager that's freaking out about Josh Jacobs. And they think, oh no, it's turning into more of a committee. Emmanuel Wilson is getting more involved. And I think Emmanuel Wilson has looked fine. But I think when push comes to shove, Josh Jacobs is the engine to this Green Bay Packers offense. And I think that this offensive performance they had against the Pittsburgh Steelers, from Jordan Love looking really great to getting Christian Watson back, I think that this is the launch pad for this offense to just take off in the second half of the season. I think the Green Bay Packers have a really great rest of season schedule, specifically when you look at the running back position. It's one of the top schedules for running backs rest of season. Jacobs has also been good this year. PFF's 7th highest graded running back. He is RB3 in terms of expected points per game. He's second in rushing touchdowns, only behind Jonathan Taylor, who scores 3 rushing touchdowns every single week. So I just want to buy running backs on good offenses. And right now, that is Josh Jacobs for me. So I think that just based on what's happened the last couple weeks, maybe with this calf thing kind of holding him back a little bit just from the Packers overloading him with touches, maybe that is the buy low opportunity that you can get to try to buy high or buy low on a guy like Josh Jacobs.
No 100-yard rushing games this season. Obviously, he's been finishing quite well for fantasy managers due to the touchdowns, which I don't really expect to go anywhere. What is the type of name that you would give up for him? Would you be looking to package a couple of running backs to try and get a stud? Would you be saying, like, I'm going to move a wide receiver I really like to get a running back I really like? Is there a buy low name that or a sell high name that you're thinking of that you want to flip for him one-on-one? What is the kind of approach to getting a player who checks 2 pretty key boxes in terms of people not wanting to move him, which is big name drafted early and has been productive, even if it's been productive just relying on the touchdowns? What would you be looking like as far as names you'd throw out to move for him?
I think maybe some guys I'm worried about their long-term longevity and how useful they'll be for me during the fantasy postseason. So 2 guys that comes to name that are running backs right now that are playing pretty well. J.K. Dobbins will be one guy, and DeAndre Swift will be the other guy. So we've talked about Swift, how the schedule right now is just absolutely fantastic, but the minute that Swift hits the playoffs, this could be a disaster for the Bears run game. So it's like, enjoy the ride with Swift, but eventually we got to pull over and get off the highway. We got to get off the Swift ride. So I think those 2 types of players, and not to say that they can't be productive over the next couple of weeks, but I know Dobbins this week has the Texans. That's a brutal spot, especially going from Dallas to Houston. I think that's going to be a tough spot for him. And we know that he has a long injury track record where I don't know if he's played a 17-game season ever in his NFL career. So with RJ Harvey kind of breaking out, maybe Dobbins plus a piece, a wide receiver, a bench guy, someone that went off on your, a boomer bust guy that went off this past week. I think maybe that's the way to approach getting Josh Jacobs. So moving up a tier at running back with a guy like Dobbins or Swift.
If you were a first place team and you're just like really trying to think about playoffs, would you package Dobbins and Swift together for Jacobs and say, listen, like, I know he's a big name. It's going to take maybe an overpay on pure value to get him, just because that's the nature of how people make trades with guys they drafted early and who are producing for him. Would you trade them both to get him if you're, a team that's likely to make the playoffs already?
Yeah, I think so. Trying to consolidate the top end of your roster where depth is not really as important. Like, you're going all in on your starters for that playoff run, and it's less important about, well, what if X guy gets hurt? Again, if your top guy gets hurt, then you're probably cooked anyway. So yeah, I think that I would be okay with doing that. Again, if you need wins right now, you probably want to keep Dobbins and Swift just because they have good matchups for the most part. Or Dobbins is tougher this week, but Swift has good matchups and he's producing for you as well. So, yeah, I think that with trades in general, it's always dependent, or a big role that plays is, what do you need right now? Like, you need to go on a win streak. Like, you got to get guys that are going to produce right now versus, hey, I'm 7-1. I can really look ahead to the future.
Yeah, most leagues, right, you go regular season will run through about week 14, so you got 6 weeks left. Like, if you are below 500, you have to be considering that when making trades. You can't just, like, we talk a lot about, like, oh yeah, look at this playoff matchup or what this guy can do for you in the playoffs. Like, you have to get there, right? So, be mindful of what your record is when you're making these trades and when we're giving this kind of analysis. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. We know Tuesdays are for scouting the waiver wire. Once you're done finding your diamond in the rough, head on over to Hard Rock Bet, see what their odds are to score another touchdown, and see what their yardage total over is as well. On Hard Rock Bet, you don't have to wait for week 9 to kick off to get in on the action. There's always something to bet on. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. There's new promos every day, so if you're listening to this later, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. Erickson, who is your first running back to sell?
Travis Etienne, and I believe that he has been a sell on this show before. And I think that after I listed him as a sell, he went off for another monster game with like another long touchdown run. But that has not been the case for him over the last couple weeks. So he's been bottled up basically for his last 3 games against the Rams before the Jaguars bye week. He was 8 carries for 44 yards. He played 54% of the snaps. So I've been concerned about Etienne and his usage and his fall off in efficiency in tougher matchups. That concerns me for him long term. And I think that Bashal Tutin, the rookie running back, is going to have a bigger role coming out of the bye week. We see this a lot of times with rookies after the bye. The coaches get them more involved in the game plan. And the thing to note with Tutin is he's been on the injury report for like the last month with a shoulder injury. So he's been limited in practice, then he gets cleared for the game, and he sees a handful of touches, and then that's really it for Tutin. So if he comes out of the bye week and is fully healthy, then we could see him carve out a larger role alongside Etienne. So again, this week, the matchup you're not really concerned about with the Jaguars facing the Raiders, who are also coming off their bye week, but we do have matchups against the Texans that are coming up in the next month. That's a really tough matchup. I don't like the playoff schedule for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have to play the Jets and the Broncos. I don't think that those are necessarily like the greatest spots for fantasy goodness. Maybe the Jets will see what their defense looks like, but at Denver is definitely a tough spot for running backs, receivers to kind of overcome. So, yeah, I'm just not excited about Etienne. And he does this all the time, where first half of the season comes out, guns blazing, looks great, and then he starts to fade as the season continues. So, with him coming off the bye week, he is someone that I'm trying to get off my roster.
A point I want to make that I think Travis Etienne kind of highlights well is, and I am guilty of this when I am talking about how a player has done throughout the course of the season, weekly positional finish, kind of reading through them, I think is a data point that I will fall back on regularly. I do think it's worth recognizing that, like, it's been not the deepest, few weeks in a row for running back scoring. So, for example, with Etienne, if you look at the last 3 weeks, leading up to the bye, he was RB positional finish, RB 30, RB 23, RB 32. And you say, okay, well, like, falling off, like, but you're still in like the 20s and early 30s. Like, that's maybe a similar floor to what we're talking about with Jaylen Warren, like a little bit lower, but like he's not actually being a disaster. His total points in those games and half PPR scoring were 7.3, 7.5, and 6. He didn't even reach 8 fantasy points in any of those games. It's just that those were kind of weak, W-E-A-K, weeks, W-E-E-K. Like, for example, he was RB 23 in a week where he had 7.5 fantasy points. Like it's just, be mindful of that. Like, it's not like he's been playing very well and really has been giving you a floor. A week where he gets you 6 fantasy points, even if he's technically, an upper half RB3 in the weekly finish, that does not matter for winning your fantasy matchup in a given week. That will not help you win a fantasy championship. It is an irrelevant number, essentially, in the grand scheme of things. So I would just kind of caution people to look at beyond the game log positional finish and I say that as somebody who I know I bring that up a lot. Again, I think Etienne's a good example of that. He's RB20 in the rest of season rankings. That definitely feels wrong to me. Again, the position is not looking that strong with all of these injuries and things like that. Like at a certain point, you have to start ranking players who have given you something this season. I mean, I'll just say like back to back, it's Etienne and Kenneth Walker. I would rather have Walker rest of the season for sure, and he's one spot behind Etienne. The other names behind him, Dowdle, Omarion Hampton, like if you really believe that he's going to come back healthy in a few weeks. David Montgomery, Tyrone Tracy, who I think is probably a better sell candidate than a buy candidate, but is somebody that, there's interest in at the moment with Scadaboo's injury. Bill Merritt, Jordan Mason, Ramondre Stevenson, Alvin Kamara. Like these are the names that are behind him. So it's not like you're, I'm not saying sprint to go buy all those names instead, but RB20 does feel too high for Etienne. Walker is the big one that I would definitely switch. The others, it's like, I don't know what you do, but 20 feels too high.
He's in a tough spot where you don't feel great about really any of those running backs. So He is there because it's, okay, he's still the starting running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's not really in this committee. But what happens after this week, right? Where do you think his ranking is going to go? Do you think he's going to go up, and he's just going to have his monster game against the Raiders? Tootin's going to not be involved at all? Or do we come out and say, oh, Tootin has a much bigger role. He also looks really explosive. Etienne is now going back to just really being that pass catcher out of the backfield. So that's kind of where I'm trying to get ahead of it with Etienne. So again, like the matchup's not terrible this week. He'll be a top 24 ranked running back in the rankings, and he's probably someone you can probably still start this week. But I'm just trying to get ahead of potential usage change in this backfield.
I'd be interested. You could maybe get more for Etienne just based on name value, but if you can't, just given the nature of your league, I'd be interested in trading him for like multiple, not lottery tickets, but like kind of home run swings. Like I would trade him for like Vidal and RJ Harvey or Trey Benson or Travion Henderson. Like not for depth, but for the more bites at the apple you have, the better chance that you're going to hit on one of them. Like maybe Omarion Hampton's injury lingers and Vidal ends up being like a real league winner down the stretch. Maybe Harvey does eventually take over the backfield if Dobbins gets hurt. You make Trey Benson, we were really excited before he got hurt. Maybe he comes back healthy. Travion Henderson looked better this week. Like maybe in the second half he does take, like if you can get multiple swings at that, again, I would be considering moving Etienne for something like that, even if that, again, kind of the opposite of what we talked about in the buys segment. If that's a value hit, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, somebody in the Discord asked me Vidal, Etienne, Rico Dowdle, like those types of players, who do you want rest of the season? I just said Vidal because, hey, this guy's an RB1 right now. like I'll just take that guy, take the guy that sees 75%
It's a dangerous
of the
game, just assuming like Omarion Hampton is going to be 100% healthy when we expect him to be, and he's going to take the game. Like, yeah, that totally could happen. I like Hampton, obviously, but I wouldn't just assume it if you're taking swings on upside.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not so bullish on any of those other guys' outlooks rest of season. So what if Chuba Hubbard stays healthy all year? Then it's just going to be a committee. And then what if Tootin has a bigger role, like I kind of think might happen with Etienne? Then I don't feel great about having Etienne on my roster the rest of the season. So going back to that phrase we talk about, what the bird in hand versus the bird in the bush, is that the phrase, whatever it is? I know Vidal is going to be a good running back to have right now.
One bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And yes, I think you've kind of botched that most of the times
every single time. Death, taxes, and me botching that.
I think if you just say bird in the hand, people will get it, and you don't need to say the whole thing.
All right. Appreciate that.
Speaking of Chuba Hubbard, he's your other running back to sell here.
It's so over for Chuba Hubbard. What we've seen through 2 weeks is Rico Dowdle's basically run circles around him as the more efficient running back. And Dowdle really got the short end of the stick in this last game, where they're doing the same thing where they're switching off every single drive. And on one of Rico Dowdle's drives in the second half, Andy Dalton fumbles the ball away. And then on the next drive, it goes back to Chuba Hubbard. So Rico Dowdle missed out on a whole opportunity. And then, of course, that's like a really long drive. Dowdle ends up scoring on that drive. So that's why the snaps are so skewed heavily in front of Chuba Hubbard. 59% of the snaps, 12 carries, which is superior both to Dowdle, even though Dowdle was the guy that was more efficient. So I do think Hubbard is trying to knock off some of the rust that he had from missing time with his injury. But the bigger picture here with the Panthers is their offensive line got eviscerated by injuries. They lost 3 starters last week. and one of them is definitely out indefinitely with an Achilles injury. So what was once viewed as their strength offensively, like we're going to run the football between the tackles, I don't know if that's the case anymore. So Hubbard scored. I want him off my roster. This isn't even necessarily a sell high because I don't think that Hubbard is really valued like so supremely high, but you got to get rid of him because I don't think that this is going to get better for him anytime soon. So Hubbard to me is a sell. Just get him off your roster.
A sell at any cost. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, he's plummeted in the rest of season rankings. Like, you find somebody who just really needs running back help because they've taken injuries and see what you can get.
I would rather have just give me a Seahawks running back. If I can like flip him for Charbonnet or like Hubbard plus a receiver for Charbonnet, just at least I'll take the committee on a team that's actually good. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm viewing the situation where, yes, I will take on another annoying backfield split, but at least if it's one that I think will have more touchdown opportunities and is not playing behind an injured offensive line, I think that's the way to approach it. I think you got to be creative. Again, if you have Hubbard, you got to be creative with some of these trades. Think outside the box. I just don't think that he's going to burn you if you just try to move him, even if it's for less than his quote-unquote market value.
In fantasy sports, flexibility is everything, especially when you're managing injuries, bye weeks, or tough matchups. Your finances deserve the same level of control, and that's exactly what Klarna delivers. Klarna is your smarter, everyday spending partner. Inside the app, you can track purchases, compare prices, find deals, earn cash back, and choose to pay now or later with no interest when payments are made on time. It's the kind of tool that helps you stretch your money further and make every purchase count. This isn't about spending more, it's about spending wisely. Klarna fits seamlessly into how you already shop, whether you're picking up groceries, upgrading tech, or even just keeping an eye on your budget. Klarna gives you the financial flexibility to shop smart and stay in control, just like a good roster move. Download the Klarna app or head to Klarna.com to learn more. CA resident loans made or arranged pursuant to a California finance law license, NMLS number 1353190. Klarna balance account required. Klarna may get a commission. Limitations, terms, and conditions apply. Rather than do our buy, sell, and hold trios, we're going to try something, I would say new. It's what we wanted to do at the beginning of the year. We weren't getting a ton of audience questions for trades early on, so we decided to kind of go in a different direction to wrap these shows. Now that we're closer to the trade deadline, people kind of have a better sense of their teams. We do want to talk a little bit more real audience trades. So please send those in for the next few weeks while we continue the show prior to the fantasy trade deadline. We're going to start doing these to wrap up the shows here as long as we're getting questions. So we've got some running back questions here from the audience. These come from both Discord, so if you can drop questions into Erickson's AMA channel, or I'll be posting tweets. You can go ahead and tweet at us as well for these. Some of these come from Twitter. Some of these are coming from Discord. We'll move through them pretty quickly because we went a little long on that episode. Erickson, first question here. What do you think of trading Chase Brown and Derrick Henry to get Jahmyr Gibbs?
I really like this trade. I think it's talking about what we discussed with Josh Jacobs. Now it's to a higher extent, I think, because you are trading two pretty solid assets, or I would say above average assets with Chase Brown and specifically with Derrick Henry, but you're getting the best running back in the deal, which I think is Jahmyr Gibbs. They're coming off their bye week. Gibbs has kind of been unlocked as a bigger part of this offense. We're not really seeing it be as much of a split between him and David Montgomery. It's really more of the Gibbs show. I really like Detroit's schedule rest of season. They don't have a lot of outdoor games rest of the way. A lot of their games are either at home or on the road, also indoors. So the fast track is where Gibbs plays at his best. So I like getting the elite player here. And I will say the thing with Derrick Henry, although the schedule right now is really, really good for him, his week 16 and 17
it ends harder, yeah,
is not great. It's tough, especially for a player like Henry, who we know doesn't get a lot of involvement in the passing game. I mean, week 16 against Green Bay, I mean, with Lamar Jackson, it's always like, you're not really projecting them to be in trailing game scripts, but Green Bay and New England are both good run defenses, which puts Derrick Henry in a tough spot if he doesn't score a touchdown. Now, it doesn't matter as much with Lamar as the quarterback, and obviously Derrick Henry's going to smash like the next couple of weeks with some of these layups that he has, especially facing the Bengals twice, which the guy's going to score maybe enough points to get you all the way to week 16 anyway, so you're not going to really care. But that being said, we do need to win week 16 and 17 to get the championship, and I think Gibbs will be a bigger part of that.
Yeah, I would do this, but I want to be clear that I would only do this for one of those top 4 like big running backs, Taylor, Robinson, McCaffrey, Gibbs. Like I don't want this to come across like, oh, you should sell Derrick Henry and package him to move up. Like if it's one of those 4, yes, that is worth it to me. I wouldn't move up. Like James Cook is 2 spots higher in our rest of season rankings. I wouldn't do this deal for James Cook, right? Like, it would need to be a guy like Gibbs that gets me to do it. Next question here. In half PPR, this is a lot of names. Sending Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, and Brian Thomas Jr. to receive Bijan Robinson, Kyle Monangai, and Tez Johnson. And I did look at his roster because this was sent in on Discord because he's getting rid of Brock Bowers. He does also have Trey McBride. So he will be okay at tight end getting rid of Brock Bowers with McBride. But sending Genty, Bowers, and Brian Thomas Jr., receiving Bijan, Monangai, and Tez Johnson.
Did this person start the draft with Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, and Trey McBride?
I don't know. Maybe it's Dynasty and they just didn't tell us it was Dynasty. I don't know.
Regardless, yeah, you got to make this move. I actually thought about putting Bijan Robinson as my buy low running back. I thought that I would be ridiculed, though, by saying, oh, you can't buy him low.
I would have ridiculed you.
Because I think I thought it just seemed like the most obvious like layup spot. This guy just totally duds out against the worst run defense in the NFL. Of course he's going to bounce back. The Falcons, if you've watched the Falcons at any point this year, you know they just lay turds sometimes. They just don't show up.
I would not do this if I didn't have Trey McBride. I think giving up Bowers along with the upside of Thomas and what Genty can maybe be in the second half is too much. But the fact that you have McBride, like I do think this makes it a win. Like yes. I think you're probably overpaying in value, but it still makes your team better.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I didn't bring Bijan because I feel like it's super obvious, but you never know. If you're watching this right now, go send a trade offer for Bijan Robinson. Maybe people are pissed after 2 weeks of him being bad. Just give it a shot. The worst thing you can say is no.
Next one, Woody Marks, Jordan Mason, Quentin Johnston, and Rico Dowdle, and George Kittle for Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, that's Marks, Mason, Johnston, Dowdle, and Kittle for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, so these ones are always tough because it's really not a 5-for-1 trade because the other team opens up roster spots and then can add a bunch of players. So you always kind of have to factor that in mind. But in most cases, you still want to just get the elite player. Unless this player is just totally depleting all of their depth and there really is no one else on the waiver wire, then I would probably reconsider. But just based on what we have, there's no one else that you're getting rid of that I'm thinking, dude, you can't get off of X player. Like there are problems with all these guys where even if this other manager is getting those players, how helpful will half these guys even be when push comes to shove, whether it's Mason, whether it's Dowdle. Kittle is a strong tight end piece, but if you have another tight end that's starting, clearly you've had a tight end with Kittle missing so much time. So yeah, going back to the theme of the show with running backs is get the elite guys. So I'm willing to pay, what is it? You pay ponies for a horse? Is that the expression? Yeah.
That one I don't know.
Oh, come on, Worm.
I can't help you there. Killing a bird with 2 stones, one in the hand, 2 in the bush. I can help you there. I don't know this ponies for horse one, so I can't weigh in on that. We've got one more question here. This one comes from X/Twitter. Hey, Fantasy Bros, I sit at 8th place with a 500 record and the second lowest total points by a significant margin. Should I trade Judkins for Dobbins or bank on Judkins for rest of season with the easier schedule? I am thinking if I don't win out, then I won't read what he said because it's a family show, but that let's just say I will not make the playoffs. So would you trade Judkins for Dobbins? 8th place, he's 500 record, second lowest total points.
Yeah, I think that if you need to start spitting out wins right now, I think that
it's what we talked about. Like your trading strategy should be dependent on your record and your playoff outlook.
That being said, Dobbins is also playing the Texans this week, which is a brutal spot. I think I'd rather trade Judkins for something else than Dobbins. I think that might be my best advice because, obviously Judkins is going to help you this week because he's on a bye. He's also injured, which is also problematic for his rest of season. Maybe it's you get Dobbins and you try to flip Dobbins for something else that can help you more this week. And again, maybe I'm overvaluing this one matchup against the Texans. Again, Dobbins could still score a touchdown and not be a total 0. But I would maybe float Judkins out with some for other running backs as well. Wouldn't just pigeonhole yourself to Dobbins.
Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel where you can come and ask your specific fantasy trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. For Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in to our running backs, buys, and sells. Be sure to check out part 2 both on YouTube and wherever you get your audio for the wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.